Hello boys and girls, and welcome to art. This week in art we are continuing to learn about 1-point perspective. You will need 2 pieces of paper to complete this project. So we are going to start off by creating our 1-point perspective where all objects lead into 1 point. For instance, if I create a point in the center of my paper, I'm going to make sure that every object that I draw around that point goes and leads to that point. So I'm drawing different shapes around that point. I don't want them to be too close to that point because we're going to create lines that meet at that point. I can draw some triangles, circles, squares, rectangles, any type of shape I want, kind of in a circle around our point. Draw one more triangle on this side. So now that I have all my shapes, I'm going to draw a line that goes diagonally from the edge of that shape to that 1 point. From the edge of the shape to that point. Just draw a line that goes down the center of that shape, but doesn't keep going because that is the side of the shape leading to that 1 point. For a circle, I'm going to start at one side and draw a line that goes to that point, go from the other side to that point. Same thing with this next circle. Going around to each different shape. Now some shapes we might not be able to see all of the line that goes to it. For instance, we might have this line go, but we don't see that extra side of it because it's on the other side. We only see the front side. Okay, next shape. So here's that third side going in. All lines go towards that center point. Now that we have our first layer, we can add a couple more shapes that go around the edge. Another triangle, another rectangle. Now we're not going to see all of these points, but the idea is that everything goes to that center. So we're only going to see part of it going from the sides to that edge, to the center. So thinking about where that center point is and how the lines need to be placed kind of diagonally or slightly angled towards that center point. So my line would continue behind the shapes that I've already created. And then that third line, to make it look 3-dimensional, you might even see part of the side of this shape going to there, going back into that space. So all lines are leading to that center point. This one kind of looks a little off, so I'm going to have it go towards that center a little bit more. I think that's a little better. Thinking of that line that's going to be traced from that side of that circle to that center point. Now that we have our shapes coming out of the center, we are going to take our black Sharpie and trace around all our shapes and all our lines that meet towards that middle point, that one point. Now that I've outlined my shapes using my Sharpie so that all lines lead to that center point, I'm going to think about value and how to create some shadows to make it look like these shapes are more three-dimensional. They might get darker as they move towards that center shape, that center point. So let's start by thinking about the colors that we're going to use and how we're going to make them use value to go from light to dark to make our objects look more three-dimensional. So going from dark, from the center point where all the lines are leading down into the middle of our paper, and then slowly, gradually putting less pressure on our color pencil to make it lighter. Same thing with the inside of our shapes. Maybe it's darker on the inside and then lighter towards the top to make it appear as if it is three-dimensional and is going towards the inside of our paper. It's all leading to that one point. Maybe one side is darker, one side is lighter, however you want to decorate your shapes. So it gives it depth as it's going inside. As you're coloring in each shape with your colored pencils, think about the placement of the shapes around it. If there's a shape next to it or behind it, there might be a darker area, and coloring a little bit darker in that area where the shapes would be behind it or beside it. Going towards the center of your paper, where all the lines are leading towards that one point, all shading will be darker. Going towards the sky or towards the top of the shape, the area is lighter. Make sure to color in all shapes as best as you can using your colored pencils. Make sure to use bright colors. Please don't use black or brown to color these in. And now you can see all the shapes leading to that center point, that one point, creating the perspective and making it appear as though all these shapes are going from that center point and coming out into kind of like a three-dimensional space. Now that we have our 3D shapes and our one-point perspective, we are going to get our second piece of paper ready for our background, and we are going to use splatter paint to create our background. I have watercolors that I'm using. Please make sure that you have a drop cloth or a mat on your table, or you place your paper in a big Tupperware container before you do any splatter paint so that you do not mess up the area around you or the surface that your paper is on. It can get very messy when you do this. So to make splatter paint, you're going to dip your paintbrush in water, swirl it around, and then you're going to take your finger and pull up on the bristles to flick the paint onto the paper. And the more water you have, and the more pigment you have on your brush, the more splatter you will create. So please make sure that your area has some kind of mat, some kind of cloth under it, so that you do not make a big mess with paint all over the surface of your table. Once you've added your splatter paint all over the surface of your paper, please make sure that your paper dries before cutting out your 3D shape 1-point perspective and gluing it onto the splatter paint paper. I am cutting out the 3D 1-point perspective shapes, trying to leave as little white spaces as possible, and adding glue, just a dot, not a lot. All right, boys and girls, here we have our 1-point perspective shapes. All the shapes are going towards 1 point, or all our shapes are coming out of 1 point and popping out of the paper. We created some splatter paint for the background to make it look like it's bursting from the paper. So I hope that you enjoy creating this project, and I cannot wait to see all the fun splatter paint and shapes that you create. Make sure that you add value to each one so that it helps create that 3-dimensional effect. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much.